Well, I'm gonna go ahead and start us off. Hi, everybody. This is our podcast. It is mostly mine, but I think I'm gonna try to have people on as much as I can because I don't want to be alone. I don't ever want to do like a solo ep because that would be nervous just talking to the camera by myself. That's not really how philosophy is done, I think. So this week I have with me here Elijah.
Hello.
You want to give us a brief intro to what you do, like why you do? I think that's
That's
a
such
good
a,
question for a philosopher. Why do
I
you
didn't
like
have a question.
philosophy? Why do you like Latin American philosophy? Tell us a little bit.
That's a difficult question, I think, because whenever people ask me this, I kind of like don't even know what to say without sounding cliche and cheesy. So like I majored in philosophy, or I declared my major when I was a sophomore. So I was going to be an environmental scientist, which is like way out there compared to what we're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
But I took like an ethics, happiness, and a good life class, like the one we did dialogue with. And that one really changed my life. I remember coming out of the first class and going directly to like my academic advisor and telling them like change my major please because I found what I want. And I was actually with Dr. Stain, so shout out to Dr. Stain. But when I took his intro to Latin American class, like dude, that's when I was like, this is my specialty. Like, I'm going to specialize in this like fields of philosophy or this area of philosophy because it just really resonated like with my experience here in the valley and just understanding that like my experience and other people's experience here in the valley is like a vital one and that we could use to transform like ourselves with like writing or whatnot or even just talking amongst ourselves and like really grappling with what exactly how we live here in the valley and how like that affects like our every being. So I couldn't help myself but like really fall in love with it. It's like such a thing that I just feel like if I didn't have it, I don't know how I would be doing like mentally or like holistically. I would probably be missing something but not even know exactly what I'm missing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know if it's like that for you, but I
Yeah.
feel
N-
uh,
very much like that for me. I took so I was, as you know, I was just doing biology, and you have to take for the course like the graduate requirements for biology. You have to take one philosophy class. So I was like I didn't know that much about philosophy, so I was like, I'll just take the intro one. That one will be the easiest. And then I looked at like the reviews, and it was like Dr. Alessandri had super high reviews. So I was like, okay, I'll do that one. And then I did that one, and it was like mind blowing, like, because Alessandri is a very good lecturer, and we started like we did everything. So we started ancient philosophy, and then we just went all the way down. So, like, all the like popular schools of philosophy, she started off with like the ancient Greeks, and then existentialism, and all the other famous schools, if you want to call them that. So for me, I had that same experience where I was like, as soon as Alessandri, like, you know how they give that lecture, like, why you should be a bio major or a philosophy major? I was like, sign me up, coach. Because she had, like, things there where you could just sign up. And she's like, oh, yeah, I'll just drop it off at the registrar. I was like, dope. Sign, count me in, chief. I didn't even have a second thought about it. I was like, I'm just doing that.
yeah, like I just felt kind of like, wow, I don't know if maybe it's because of the exceptional professors we have, like at the philosophy department at UTRGV,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's just, I don't know, like I really don't know, but they're just exceptional in what they do. So it's like hard not to fall in love with like what they're teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And when you like go into like, I guess the rabbit hole, you start to realize like, holy shit, like I really do like resonate with this and I love it
Mm-hmm.
much more than just being told like of a lecture and stuff. So when you get to like really grapple with it, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I don't know, it's just so cool.
Yeah,
It's a
no,
cool
for sure. Uh-huh. Like, I don't know if you had this similar experience, but like talking to other professors, like my biology professors, it was always scary. Like they always seemed like they didn't want to talk. Like you'd go to their office hours and they would like be doing something. So it kind of seemed like not a shit on anybody at the biology department, but a lot of them not exactly the most personal people, and their lectures, it was just PowerPoint next, just reading off the PowerPoint. And so when I took Alessandri's intro class, no PowerPoint. She just got up there and talked, and I was like, "This is cool. Like I feel like I'm learning something right now." And then like she would have this journal, and I was like,
Uh,
"This is it right here. This is for me."
yeah, I mean, we only have, I think, Dr. Stain told me the other day, it was like 100 students in like the philosophy department. So the philosophers like they have more time to talk to you and they care about like what you're gonna do after you graduate and stuff, or just in general, like your well-being there, like in the university. So it just it's a nice welcoming atmosphere and it's hard again not to like be welcomed into it and like stay there because I didn't think like I was maybe thinking maybe a minor in philosophy, but I was like, no, 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 no. This
Yeah,
has to be my major. This has to be something I'm gonna do because it was such an inspiration to see this be done. I was like, people could be professors in philosophy, and I mean, shit, I want to do that too.
yeah, yeah. That
Cool.
literally the exact same experience that I had. Like, I was like, "Do I want a minor in it?" And then I took like more biology class or more philosophy classes, and I was like, damn, they don't miss. I haven't taken one bad class. I want to keep doing this. I want to keep taking the classes. Like
Yeah.
I had no bad experience like taking a class. I was never like, fuck, this class fucking blows, dude. I don't want to go. I don't feel like going in today. Like, mm-mm. I never had any experience like that.
Not even writing like Pearson's papers, because you know how Pearson's papers could
Oh yeah.
be extensive there. But even doing that, like I would tell people from other majors, like, oh, I'm writing like a 20-25 page essay. They were like, what? What are you doing? And I was like, let's just, I mean, if you know the material, like, and you've been following along, like, it's kind of like engaging. We're not kind of, it is
Yeah.
engaging. So by the time you're done, like with the semester and you have to write that paper, you have so much to go off of because you've just been like thinking, or at least I have, I'm like, oh, this would be a good topic to talk about or
Mm-hmm.
like argue about.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, it's very dense and it's like it's different from like work, like other essays that I've had to written for like biology or something cuz like the topic is like inherently interesting. Like especially with what you're talking about in like Pearson's class or Stain's class, like sure I can write a 25-page essay, like sign me up, dude. That's easy peasy cuz well, it's not easy, but it's not grinding you down like writing like a chem lab report.
oh
Like those
no.
things are the absolute worst, dude. Not fun at all to write. Because while you're writing like the philosophy essays, you're kind of wrestling with yourself. Like you'll have an argument or something, and you'll be like, "Okay, time. I gotta try to prove myself wrong." And then you're like, "I can't. I'm a genius." And then you just keep writing.
That's how I feel with my paper right now. Like the culturally relevant teaching, I'm like, because I started like over here, let's say, and now I'm like polar opposite to that direction. Because I was going to like argue against like Gloria and Saldua, which
Mm-hmm.
is like so funny because they're actually like you know how for a while they were talking about like making a landmark there close by the university
Mm-hmm.
library, but they like never did it. So finally, like on Monday, they're gonna reveal the grand opening of like I think it's a plaque of her name,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I hope it's a statue too and a plaque because that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But when I was like talking about me like arguing against her, I kind of felt like the whole university was looking at me like, what? How could you do that? Like she's a grand powerhouse, and she is. Like she has some very like I resonate with her work
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways. But then there's like little like hints of like I don't know. I just hints of like maybe grinding where I don't agree necessarily with her points. Like I always tell people like it what they when they ask me what do you think about her, I point to La Frontera, which is like the borderlands.
Mm-hmm.
And in her last chapter of that book, that's where I have a huge issue with because she's talking about like the new mestiza consciousness, right? And she's referring another Mexican philosopher, Jose Vasconcelos, and him within himself, he has some problematic ideologies. But we have to understand the context of like historical means and stuff. So like in his time, not to excuse it, but it's a justification as to why his writings were such because they were very racist and homophobic and you know sexist and whatnot. And his cosmic race, like he talks about four different races. So he talks about the Spaniards, the whites, indigenous blood, and then what he calls black blood. So in the whole book, he talks about having this cosmic race that essentially like all of the races combine into one and making in this cosmic universe, right? And he says like that's like a beautiful thing, right? Like when you hear it, when I'm telling you, you're like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, it's nice. It's a good thought. But when you go into detail with what he's saying, it's like he's reluctantly taking indigenous and what he calls black blood, because he mentions that like the superior races between the four would be like the Spaniard, the whites, and like the inferior would be like the indigenous and black blood. So when he says that, it's kind of like a reluctance in my way of seeing it, because it's like you don't really want to take these people into the cosmic race, but for the sake of like your argument in your book, you're going to do
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Hmm.
And he even has like this point where he says like that the inferiority of the indigenous and black blood will dissipate within like the superiority of the white and like Spaniards.
Hmm.
I was like, what?
Yeah, that's
This
a little sussy.
it's sussy. So when she used him, I was like, and she opens with him in that
Hmm.
chapter, the last chapter,
Hmm.
Pneumastisa Consciousness. She opens with like kind of like a little synopsis of who he is and what he's about.
Hmm.
And I wanted to argue by her using him, like she dissipates her own argument for like a new mestiza consciousness. Because if you're using somebody that's reluctant of like bringing in like what he calls inferior races, then like your argument for new mestiza consciousness falls flat.
Hmm.
It
Can
just
yeah?
doesn't.
Can you give her argument for us in case for the
Oh,
uninitiated?
yeah.
Because I've read La Frontera, but it's been a long time. I read it for Alessandre's intro.
Oh, you
Yeah.
did.
Uh-huh. And I that's the only so that was my intro. She was my intro to Latin American philosophy. So a lot of like the questions that I have here were in regards to some of that, and I wanted to ask your thoughts. But please continue.
You know what's funny is I literally have, oh, you can't even see it, but I have the seventh chapter pulled out with like annotations. That's why I don't vibe with it. And like I have these, I never highlight things, but like I have like the highlighted formats to show like emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so she wants to say, okay, in her whole book, La Frontera, she's talking about a choque, so a collision. And what she means by collision is that like in the soul like of Mexican Americans or people in the borderlands, she says that we experience that choque of collisions between different identities and different races that are housed within us. So the only way to alleviate like that choque is to stop struggling, stop fighting the choque and just accept like all of the bodies, all of the voices that are housed within you. So it's a beautiful thing, you know, because I do think that in the borderlands, like we've talked about this, like aside from this, where it's like you feel like we feel like we're too Mexican or we're too Mexican to be American, but we're too like American to be Mexican. So we're like we don't even match with any of like our identities. We feel kind of like alienated from both worlds, and it's hard to like grapple with that because you feel so, I guess, inferior to both, and you don't really know where you stand in the world. You're like, where do I go from here? So I like that notion where it's like, okay, like you experience these choques in your soul, and it's affecting your psyche. It's affecting the way you understand yourself and you value yourself. So the only way to relinquish that would be to just accept all bodies in your I mean all voices in your bodies.
Mm-hmm.
But by using like Jose Vasconcelos, I kind of have a difficult like reaction to what she's saying. 'Cause it's like, okay, if you want me to accept the voices in my body and to accept that this choke is happening and to let it go per se, what does that mean with Jose Vasconcelos? Like, what does that mean when he says to embrace the four major races, as he calls, like, again, the white, the Spaniard, the indigenous, and black blood? Like, if he's reluctantly taking them, does that mean that she also has that perpetuation of reluctance with
Mm-hmm.
these races, or is that like just maybe a misuse on her part? So I really like I don't know how to like interpret that, because I want to give her the benefit of the doubt that she just misused him and
Mm-hmm.
she didn't really know like how to use him properly, or maybe not to use him at all. or if she's accepting like what he's saying in his cosmic race. Like I haven't really found much information to support one or the other. So
Hmm.
that's why I'm like, until I know more,
Yeah,
I
and with the whole cosmic race part, like we kind of see that happening in real world politics today. Like there's the white replacement theory. Like Tucker Carlson will go on and be like, the immigrants are replacing the white people. Like where, because I think the idea of the cosmic race, like when you get to the part where it's all races at like one point will kind of be one big cosmic mixed race, and the science seems to agree that that's probably what's gonna happen, and the um, the people reluctant to like accept all of the races that they deem inferior or whatever they think about it. I think it is kind of weird. I'm gonna have to agree with you that Alsandua like uses that guy that's kind of reluctant with it. I would have preferred without that. I'm
yeah.
gonna have to agree with you. And I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your personal experiences dealing with El Choque, because I have a lot with that too. Because my Spanish is awful, so a lot of with my like I can understand it, but I can barely speak it, or not barely, but I have trouble speaking it. So like when it comes to hanging out with my family, all my side of the family speak Spanish. Like everybody there is Spanish. Like I don't have anybody who's gringo or gringa, nothing like that. Everyone is Hispanic. So when you go to family gatherings, everyone's speaking Spanish, and I'm just there like I can kind of understand, but I can't participate. El choque. That's for me. And then if I was to like go somewhere where it's majority white, right, or whatever, they're gonna look at me and be like, and pull out like the thing from Family Guy where it's the skin check, and he's a little too dark to be American. This one is, you know, look at me like that. So I wanted to hear some of your personal experience, and I wanted to practice the Spanish. So give it to me in Spanish if you wanna, if you're comfortable.
Ah, oh my gosh, I haven't talked Spanish in a while, so I always get so like embarrassed doing it when I haven't done it in a while because I'm like, I'm gonna mess up and then I'm gonna
Right.
stutter
Yeah.
because I have a stuttering problem, but
Mm-hmm.
I could do like code switching,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
like tying back to your experience, like when I get out of the valley and I see like, or I experience like a world of like culture shock because it's like, whoa, like there's, I don't know, it's just so intense. It's like our little world in the third world is like a bubble. So when I'm out of the bubble, it feels like my bubble just got bursted. So I just don't really know like my place there. And there's been times where like, yes, I speak Spanish, but like white people will come to me and expect me to speak Spanish. And I'm just like, well, I do, good thing I do. But like if I didn't, then that would contradict or that would collaborate with the choque that like
Mm-hmm.
experience it. It's like you as a Mexican American, like you're almost expected by like your peers and everyone else like to speak Spanish or at
Yeah.
least to like understand it.
Yeah. The side like the majority white people expect you to speak Spanish, and when you go home to the valley, everyone expects you to speak Spanish. Your family members, at least my family members, expect me to speak Spanish. So
Yeah. And my mom's a Spanish teacher, man. So like her Spanish is just like it's great. Like it's
mm-hmm.
fluent, it's amazing. And we were talking about this the other day where I was telling her because she came from Mexico and I think when she was like 7 or 12.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like a while. And I know there's studies to say that like when a child assimilates to another culture and they're learning like that language of the dominant culture, that they have difficulties with fluency, like they have like a little accent or whatever. And she doesn't, like she mastered that like both languages. But she was telling me one time that like with her before she went to college, before like she got her MA and her bachelor's and stuff, like that her Spanish wasn't like as great as it is now. But I heard it before all my life and it sounded pretty good. Y cuando like when I look at myself, I think like I am almost like a failure to my culture sometimes. Like I feel that way because you know, I'm more, I guess, dominant in English than I am in Spanish. Like, I could talk in Spanish and I could write in Spanish, I could read in Spanish, but it's gonna take me a while. Like, it's gonna take me a while to write everything in Spanish and to read it in Spanish and to talk even, because I have to like code switch in my brain, like, oh, okay, this word in Spanish means English, and then this other word in English means something in Spanish. Like, it's just so hard. And I don't think I experience it like as much anymore, but when I do, it's like a rude awakening. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know how to like I guess accept the collision that's happening in my soul and psyche. And like well like to deteriorate a little bit or deteriorate to like go off a little bit is like my name Elijah, like like it's not culturally significant in my bringing, right, like my upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes like my gender identity and my culture identity, like that's what creates like a collision for me, because it's like I don't recognize myself like as a woman. Like I recognize myself as non-binary if I had to categorize myself, but even that, like I don't like labels.
Mm-hmm.
It's too conforming. But for the sake of like confirmation or yeah, conformity, I'm just gonna say like non-binary.
Mm-hmm.
But being identifying as non-binary and having like a, I guess, androgynous or male like attributed name, that always strikes people in our culture as like weird.
Mm-hmm.
They're like this weird little deviant is like not following the rules, you know, like they're not they've abandoned their like cultural name,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going off of another like identity that like sometimes people tell me like I'm kind of like an imposter almost, because like I preach like cultural roots having like embedded in that, but then people will say like, oh, but your gender identity, like that's like or that's like contradicting to like your culture, like so how are you going to wrestle with that, or how are you going to answer to that? I
Mm-hmm.
really don't know. It's hard.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that because um, Spanish is a very gendered language. All the feminine is A, ends in A, so all the Sofia, Mariana, a lot of it ends with A or I. So Elijah, they're like, what do you mean non-binary? We have feminine and masculine. So
Yeah,
it's interesting
like
to hear that you've felt that with just your name, just the name, than the role that they would expect. Because when you give something a name, it has an expected role. So it's.
exactly rectifying names.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes back to like Latinx. Like people, some people have like strong opinions about Latinx,
Mm-hmm.
and I try to see it from the point of like well, it's like a gender like neutral thing, you know, we in our language like prima primo, like there's no in between, there's just one or the other, so it's like masculine or feminine, and you kind of have to choose because like the limited words in our language to describe like anything outside of the normalcy is like difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So one time I had this argument with somebody. It wasn't necessarily an argument, but more of like a conversation, let's say, about why they disagreed with being labeled as Latinx. And their argument was based not on gender identity, but more so with like, I guess, sticking to the names that we have in our language that identify ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So like Latina, Latino, like they preferred that more. But because they didn't fit within the realm of gender neutrality, you know, like they didn't need to, like they're a cis person, so they didn't need or they didn't understand the reasoning why like Latinx was a gender neutral thing. Like they thought that it was like almost discrediting them within the community
Uh-huh.
by having the X. I was like, no, like it's there for the people who identify as that, and I feel like that should be the umbrella term for like our culture, because like I said, there's gender identity, there's cultural identity, there's so many different identities like within like our understandings of human beings. So it's like hard when you both conform like to certain things, but then create new labels, and then those labels in tune like identify you and then create you. So it's like a weird, like vicious cycle of like names, but
Yeah.
I I understand the reason why, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like what um, Judith Butler has been saying about like you have to perform your gender. So not only are you feeling the expectations of the language Latina, Latin, um, Latino, you know,
Mhm.
all of those gendered terms. So you feel like you have to put yourself in that box, and now that you've been put in that box, you have to perform as the Latina. I have to be feminine, use feminine name, dress in this feminine way. So yeah, that's interesting to hear. I've never had any like problems with that per se because I'm a cis boy. You know, I've never had to question that. I think gender is kind of dumb, like the expectations for the roles that we should play. So I would label myself a gender abolitionist. So I also prefer the Latinx or the Latin, whatever you want to call it, because I know that there's some people who don't like Latinx because it's like that's what we say here in like the U.S. and it doesn't really like they call it like linguistic imperialism because we're trying to take over the language, but at the same time, Spanish is already an imperialist language because it comes from the Spaniards, literally the kings of imperialism. Like, so a lot of people use the term Latin. I see that
Mm.
one because that one's already been like established, and there's some cultures who use that, or some Latin American cultures who use that as their like gender neutral term. So I did want to ask about that, but we kind of hit the nail on the head, I think. So
Yeah.
yeah, we've talked gender, we that difficult topic, scary thing.
But I wanted to bring up this interesting point because right now, like you just brought it out, but the other day, my friends and I were talking about how so they were talking about the lack of diversity of other races within like the border. Because
Uh-huh.
like if you look at statistics, like statistics will tell you like we are the majority here in the valley.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was like I agree with that, but I'm gonna like spin it and say like that even though we don't have a diversity in race down here, we do have a diversity in the way we label ourselves here. It's like it's Mexican American, Hispanic, Latino, Latinx. Like there's so many different things, like so many labels out there for us to like, choose. And I guess in a sense, like when we choose like which label to identify ourselves as, we're kind of like having a further collision, like as Abdullah talks about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like how has your experience been with that? Like when people ask you like what do you label yourself as? Like what do you gravitate towards?
Yeah.
And do you feel like you gravitate towards that because it's like a default
Yeah.
or yeah?
So for me, I just like I don't know, dude. Why do we gotta put a label on everything? I don't know. Because to me, like, I feel the same thing as I do. I was talking about, where because I don't speak Spanish, I don't feel Hispanic, or I don't feel, and I know I probably shouldn't, just because I can't speak the language, because I can still understand it. My culture very much is like, I don't know how you were raised, but I was raised like very traditionally, like Catholic. This is your role as a man, stuff like that, like the machismo, I got some of that in me, and we celebrated all the holidays, so I felt very much like I'm in the culture, but I can't participate to its fullest extent because I can't speak it. Every time I go to a family hangout, I'm like, mi nombre es Ernesto. And that's as good as it gets, I'm like, sí, no.
You're just
I
like
can
naughty.
yeah, I can understand what you're saying, but sometimes your family will start speaking real quick, start throwing out the words super quickly. I'm like, I can't understand anymore.
Yeah, I'm like, whoa. There's different dialects that just freak me out because I'm like, this is too fast. Like, I know what you're saying, but it's like my mind is on multi-tab, so I'm like trying to like understand what tab you're on right now.
Yeah.
So, uh,
Yeah, and the Spanish we speak here is also very different. There's a lot of slang words that no one's ever gonna hear. There's Spanglish thrown in there. So no, so even if you spoke, let's say you spoke perfect Spanish, right? And then you went to somewhere like Mexico City or something where they don't have all the slang words we have here in the valley, and you speak Spanish there, they're gonna think like their Spanish is dirty. Like that's so weird that that happens. I think so.
yeah,
Yeah.
like going back to my mom, but because she's a Spanish teacher, so like one time, because you know how like here in the valley, we use troca, like
Mm-hmm.
instead of camioneta, like the proper word would be like camioneta, but none of
Mm-hmm.
us use that because we
It's troca.
adopted like, yeah, it's troca,
I've
dude,
always
like
been
it's
troca.
English Spanish, right? But she would always be like, that's the wrong word, and I was like, but it's not, because it's like our word, like we've created here and we've adapted like two worlds into one. So like how could you fault like us for doing that? You know, it's like we're sandwiched in between two different worlds, and what outcome is that going to bring? Like it's going to bring a third language. So there's different words, like I'm trying to think of another one, like estacionar, instead of, that's a proper word, instead of paquear, like we all
Mm-hmm.
say paquear because park car.
Paquear.
Yeah, and I
Sí,
think that's,
paquear.
yeah, right. It's like our language and we get it, but if again, like you said, if we were to go to Mexico, they would be so confused. Or even to California, like they would be like really confused. Be
Mm-hmm.
like, what are you talking about? What do you mean backyard? Like, I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah. So yeah, I do feel what you were saying, the non acceptance. So I don't know where to categorize myself. Like if you're in the ideal like situation where like, oh, you grew up in Mexico and you've always been in Mexico and then you moved to the US, I you're pretty safe saying Mexican, right? But because I had the experience where I was born in McAllen and then my parents moved back to Mexico and they were stayed in Mexico till I was like 5 and then they
Mhm.
moved back to America. So I can barely remember living in Mexico. Like I have faint memories of going to like preschool and daycares, and then everything else is just America. So am I American? I was born in America, so I'm a U.S. citizen. But citizenship doesn't. That's not part of your identity. I don't think. Not too much.
It depends on what side you're asking. Like, para otro lado, they'll tell you like you're not Mexican,
Yeah.
but this other side over here will also tell you, no, you're not American. Like, it's weird. It's like, okay, how do I identify myself then? And if both of these worlds do not accept me, and they don't really, they reluctantly like accept you if they do accept you. They're like,
Yeah.
yeah, this little mucho thing, like we can barely speak Spanish, but it kind of looks like us and it kind of sounds like us. So I guess we'll adopt it as our own. But it's difficult because it's like I was born here and I was raised here, and I do have family in Mexico, but it's more on my mom's side and they don't really talk anymore, so they, and it's hard to get to that ranch as well, so like communication like through the phone, telephone, like that doesn't exist over there. There's no like telephone poles or Wi-Fi there, like it's just very secluded.
Mm-hmm.
So for us to visit them takes like, not even joking, like 10 hours to get to that little village. Um, but like when I would go there, like it was like I couldn't communicate with my grandfather properly because it's like I understood Spanish and I knew Spanish, but it was a different dialect than what he was used to. So there was words where like I knew I was saying them correctly or in my mind correctly, and he would just look at me like I don't know what it's saying. So I would just kind of like internalize like those experiences where I would go to Mexico and I would have like my family members be in shock almost like of how disgusting my Spanish was.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came over here, like it didn't seem like disgusting or it didn't seem pocho. It seemed natural, like it seemed like our own language. And when I used to live in Utah, like I was always expected to speak Spanish, and I can, but like the expectancy to do so was kind of, it always caught me off guard. It's like I don't, I don't
Like
know.
why the expectation? Like if you didn't, are you less Hispanic? Like am I less Hispanic than my mom because she can speak Spanish perfectly but I can't. So does that make me less?
It's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, oh, you speak Spanish, all right, you're Mexican, all right, you look like the part, all right, like the race card again from like Family Guy. It's like a different concept this time, but it's like it's still the same thing,
Mhm.
and it like being told that as a child, like it's just how can you not internalize those feelings? It's almost like you have those feelings of inferiority to both sides, but it's
Mhm.
not so much because you're inferior, it's because you're made to feel inferior, and that's what's perpetuating your psyche to think so.
Mhm.
But I don't like how was your education like primary, like elementary and all of that? Did you was your first language Spanish or was it English
I
first before?
I don't even know like cuz I remember going to pre-K and stuff like that or whatever like school that you go to before like actually going to school in Spanish and it was in Spanish but I don't ever really remember like being able to speak it properly and then in English I think I picked up English pretty quick like I remember always being able to speak English like every time I think to myself it's English so I want to say like English was probably like the first language that I got down. So I probably started learning Spanish first, but didn't get it down because then I had to move to the U.S. and then everyone spoke American. American. Everyone spoke English, so I think I want to say English is my first language that I fully mastered. And even then, as you saw, my I still get words tripped up sometimes. So
It happens, yeah.
yeah,
I can't even talk sometimes. I'm like, duh, 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 duh.
yeah.
Like I have a stuttering problem, so sometimes like I have to be really conscientious of how I'm like talking. But I think in my experience it was reversed. So like I mastered Spanish first,
Mm-hmm.
but then when I got to the public education system, they told my mom like your daughter like she only speaks Spanish and she needs to learn like English, so we're gonna have to put her in a bilingual program. And I do the little like air quotations because it wasn't bilingual like at all. Like they like just ran through like with English and English and English and English. So it was so hard for me at first to understand what was even being said because like in my house like we never spoke English. Like we would only speak Spanish to each other. So they encouraged my mom to start speaking to us in English at home. And because of that, like I picked it up a little bit quicker. But if it wasn't for that, I would have been so freaking lost. I just would have not known how to do anything. And that like ties back into like my paper that I'm writing about culturally relevant education and how like we have to understand the experiences, the lived experiences of students to be able to educate them in
Mm-hmm.
a healthy well-being environment. Because it's like in our education system we don't really like care to, well, not that we don't care, but we don't put emphasis on like the at home environment and how like those lived experiences can like perpetuate into this sphere of education, and how those things are like a tool to each other. Like in philosophy, we see education as like a utilization to transformation of the self.
Mm-hmm.
And our public education as we know it, it doesn't really care about your transformation as a person. Like are you ever told, are you ever asked like how is your life, like is it a good life, like all of these like philosophical questions like you would think to ask like in an educational purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's more so like so you can memorize and regurgitate the narrative of the teacher or the system that is oppressing you. It's just an oppressive structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. Like, I've heard horror stories about people who were like, they already understood like Spanish pretty good, and then they have their parents move and they start their education at like a school that they say they offer a bilingual program, and then it's all just English and them trying to hammer out the Spanish. Like, oh, only like what happened with your mom where they told her, oh, speak English at the house. You know, they really just try to hammer it out and then just English instead. Like
Yeah.
there's not the mix that I think there should be.
Yeah,
You know.
and we see bilingualism as like a disservice when it's like that's an enrichment. Like if you have a student that is able to speak both languages, that is a valuable thing to have. And why would you want to hammer that away from a student? Why would that? Because if they're speaking that language at home, that is like their primary language in my opinion, because it's like in education, like you're having to speak in English because everything's taught in English, like all of your books are in English, everything, the system is created to be in English to enforce that. But when you go back home, like you speak Spanish, and it's like these two worlds aren't colliding the way that they should be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a disservice to like our students, like the future generations to come. But if we have like a culturally relevant teaching, then we would be able to integrate those two forms of lives as one, as they should be,
Mm-hmm.
instead of regarding it like as a disservice or as something that is not valuable in the educational system.
Yeah. Like I don't know if it was Alzandua who wrote about this, but how they weren't allowed to talk Spanish like in their school, or they were told like you're not gonna need the Spanish. Like you can cut that shit out. Like
Yeah.
that's such a weird thing to say. Like you were saying, to just toss it away. Like it adds immense value. I think.
Yeah, I think she labels that as like linguistic terrorism, how like they just were very adamant on like taking out like the accent that you had in English, like just everything, beat it all out of you
Mm-hmm.
until you could really like I guess be fluent in English in whatever
Mm-hmm.
ways that is. But it's just I can't believe that like in our education system that like in the valley at least, like I feel like we could produce like a collective consciousness here that could further develop like our borderlands and also like help them be developed like in every way, like holistically, not just in academic success. Because like if we're understanding or defining academic success to be under the dominant culture's values, then you're always going to have those feelings of you're always going to have those feelings of inferiority. Like you're never going to feel like you're good enough in whatever realm of life you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's a difficult thing.
Yeah, and like going back a little bit to um, like beating it out of you, like beating the Spanish out of you. Pretty sure when she was going to school, they were actually still like hitting kids. So imagine getting hit for speaking Spanish, your native language.
Um, my
Kind of
mom.
weird.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, no, no. I'm done. You can go.
I was gonna say like my mom, like she, since her first language was Spanish, like when she got to school, like they were still under that regimen of like we'll beat you up if like you speak Spanish. So they used to hit her with a ruler, and she told me that eventually she just stopped speaking in anything. Like she didn't talk at all in class. And when she was like told to talk, like she was reluctant, and then she would get more spankings because of that. Because she was just like, I can't speak English, and regardless if I speak Spanish, I'm gonna get a spanking. If I don't speak at all, I'm still gonna get a spanking. So it's might as well just default to nothing.
Yeah, and when I
And
speak English and I have an accent, I'm gonna get a spanking.
mhm. Exactly. It's like you don't win.
There's
You
no
don't win
winning.
that kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super, super sad. So maybe we should talk a little bit about like topics you're interested in when it comes to Latin American philosophy. Like I know we talked a lot about the identity part. Is that all you wanted? Like all your interest in it, or do you have broader interests in Latin American philosophy? So like Latin American feminism and or stuff like that. Anything like that?
I I am I'm sad to say that I don't look into many like Latin feminism theories.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more based on like a collective consciousness or of gender and cultural identity.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are like my specifics, like areas that I dive into a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
read a lot about that, and I need to broaden my atmosphere into like a lot of other things, but I don't know, I just can't like get away from the whole like systematic like oppression that we feel in education. So it's like I don't know. I don't really like expand out, but there's this one book. Let me see. It actually talks about. I recommend you reading it too. It's a pretty cool book. It's called The Rise and Fall of the Cosmic Rays. It talks more about Vasconcelos in there, and it's like really good. But yeah, and yeah, it's. I
Yeah,
think that's all I do.
yeah, I'll definitely check it out. Yeah, so I don't know much about Latin American philosophy, and we've been talking about it so long, but I just realized we never really defined it. What does Latin American philosophy mean? Because
I,
anytime anybody asks me what does this philosophy mean, I'm always like it's almost an impossible question to ask,
I
right?
think it's an impossible question to answer because, well, it's not impossible, but it's difficult because there's Latin American philosophy, there's Mexican American philosophy, there's Latinx philosophy, there's, well, again, going back to the identifiers, like there's a lot of, I guess, categorization to what we are. So it's like some people ask me, like, what's the difference between Mexican American philosophy and like Latin American? And I'm like, it it's like goes back to geographical like areas, right? Like I don't know. It's just it's hard because it's like everyone here in the US like will categorize ourselves as different things.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of almost mean the same thing sometimes in umbrella terms, but I don't like saying that because it's like they have their own realms of like identifications and saying that they're all one is like just kind of like a disservice to all of them. But I guess the best way I could describe Mexican American philosophy would be like talking about have formulating like a cosmic consciousness and like integrating like our lived experiences within like every sphere of life and how those spheres of life affect like our cultural well-being. So
Mm-hmm.
like your cultural well-being is like kind of what we've been talking about right now, like making sure that like the psyche and the soul are integrated into the existence that they experience because a lot of times we are not like we're segregated from our lived experiences to other spheres of reality or life, and it's kind of hard to put them back together as they should be. um, but I think understanding Mexican American philosophy would just be to really like I guess really I I don't even know what the word would be in English, like I'm code switching in my head right now.
I mean, you
But
can
like
do it in Spanish.
that's true, right? I get embarrassed. But I guess just like just the cultural well-being, understanding like where you stand in the world and like your cultural integrity and competence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty cool thing, man. I can't help but get fascinated with it.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah, no, I wish I had all the time in the world to learn about every different topic because every time I hear about a different philosoph- philosophical topic or like a certain framework of looking at things, I always want to like dive into it, learn everything about it, kind of type of deal, but also I have my own specialization that I want to focus on, so it's like it's hard to decide what you want to focus on, especially like Latin American philosophy because I resonate with a lot of the stuff talked about when it comes to the collision. So I'm like, I want to do this, but at the same time, I don't know if I have the authority to speak on it again because you get to that clash. Like, am I really Hispanic? Do I really have some sort of connection to this? I don't know.
I don't want to like drop names, but it's interesting that you say that because I mean, I'm so sorry if Dr. Stay never sees this. Like I'm not always talking about this one conversation, I promise. But it's because one time I had a conversation with him and well, he's white and he teaches like Mexican, Latin American philosophy. And I always like and he speaks very fluent English, I mean Spanish. And it's so cool because it's like he doesn't have it. I don't think I can pick up the accent. He's like mastered both languages at, I think he started learning Spanish at 20 years old. And to learn like a different language at that age and to have mastered it, not to have picked up like an accent or anything, that's pretty crazy. That's really cool.
Hmm.
But one time we were talking about this and I was telling him, do you ever feel like you're displaced in like being the professor to teach like Mexican American philosophy, and how does that like affect the way that you see yourself, you know? And one time he was like saying that he feels like he shouldn't even be doing this because he feels like, what am I going to do as a white man telling like, you know, my
Hmm.
students like how to be Mexican, or like, you know, all of these like cultural integrity ideas within like Mexican American philosophy. How am I going to like really make an impact on that? And he was like, I just don't feel like I'm the person that should be doing this. You know, it should be somebody that's from the valley, somebody that could really like resonate with all of these experiences here and all of the students that are here. And he's like, I feel almost like an alien that just got placed into the
Yeah, like
valley
an
and now I'm
imposter.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, like an imposter.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I feel like anyone really could like teach Mexican American philosophy, especially like somebody like Dr. Stain. Like he is very like compassionate and very like empathetic towards like other human beings in any
Yeah.
situation they're in. So I guess just always having like that awareness of like your actions and your feelings and whatnot. So that way it doesn't like, I guess, infect like anything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's just that's funny.
Yeah, it's like that kind of why the gatekeeping part is an issue, like with how much Spanish do you speak or what color is your skin, because for all intensive purposes, like if you're arguing, like if you want to be Hispanic or considered Hispanic, then you have to like speak the language or whatever, understand the culture. I feel like Dr. Stain, probably uh, speaks better Spanish than me, understands the culture better than me, and understands the history better than me. So is he more Hispanic than me? Like, it's weird trying to do these gatekeeping things. I think the problem with the collision is when you try to put labels and try to gatekeep. I think that's like the big issue, at
Yeah.
least for me. I think that's what I would identify the source of the problem is just gatekeeping.
Yep.
Yeah.
I yep, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And the labels and concepts again, like we give value to them, but in tune, like they, you know, label us and they give value to us, and it's like again the vicious cycle of naming and
Mm-hmm.
labeling, and but it's hard not to. It's like a human, almost like a human like instinct to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. We categorize and label things all the time, and not everything fits in a label or category so perfectly. Like
So then,
gender's an impossible thing to try to, I think, categorize. That's why I say maybe we shouldn't. Coming in from uh, an anarchist perspective, it seems like an unnecessary hierarchy to me. Like, so, because um, we didn't get to talk about this, but I wanted to talk about kind of the racism in
mm,
Mexico. Like, you want to be like this is like the ideal is to be born more light skinned or more white than it is to be dark skinned. So like the ideal um, Spanish speaker, I guess, would be white, uh, speaks like the beautiful Spanish, speaks the non dirty Spanish, and has all whatever other characteristics you want to give them. Like that's unnecessary to me, I think. So,
yeah, it's colorism. Like I don't know if you were ever told this as a child, but like I don't want to name drop anybody in my family, but like somebody in my family would always tell all of us as kids, don't go outside too long because if you go outside too long, you're gonna get dark, implying like, oh, if the darker we are, I guess the uglier we are. And there's different products as well, like that like my family members would use to make themselves look whiter, like. I don't know if you ever saw like the bar of soap that it would like bleach your skin so you would get like lighter, and you would do it like every week or so to get lighter.
Hmm.
And then the other hair product, or the other product, was a hair product, and it had the oso. It was like a little bear. I wish I could get the picture, but it was like a little bear, and the container was like orange honey type of looking. But that also shampoo, like what it would do is it would lighten your hair. So I naturally have super 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 jet black hair,
Hmm.
um, and my mom, like, I don't fault her or anything for this, but she would use that shampoo to make my hair lighter, so it would look like a nice like golden brown.
Hmm.
But I would always think to myself, why, like, is she doing that? Like, why is she changing the hair color that I naturally have? Is that, does that mean that my hair color is ugly? Or is it because, I guess, like, what we call it, like, I hate using this, but like, we say, I'm reluctant to use it, but like, we call ourselves that aren't like beautiful, I guess, as Indias. And Indias like are identified as like dark hair and brown skin, like very, very dark skin. And like when you look like in India, you look ugly. And I don't understand that. It's like, but these are our natural like complexions, our natural like things. And being told that as a child, where it's like, don't go outside because you're gonna look like an India, would imply that looking like an India makes you ugly. And you never got to appreciate the things that you had, like the beauty that you already had in your body. It was
Hmm.
always being told you're not beautiful because of this European standards, Spaniard standards as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up on how much that still influences. Like, I don't know about you or like your experience as trying to feel beautiful, but a lot of like the standard is straight hair. There's a lot of like non frizzy, just like straight. Like my sisters would always like anytime there's like a big event going on and they want to make themselves feel like more beautiful, it's straight hair. You get the I don't know what the fuck is it? The flat iron,
Yeah.
and you just straight. Like I don't know. That seems weird to me. Like because I feel like most Hispanics are gonna be born with the naturally very wavy, crazy hair. You know.
Yeah.
So I think it's weird how we kind of try to match ourselves with the Eurocentric beauty standards because they're just better, quote unquote. Like how you were saying with trying to make yourself look more white, trying to appeal to that.
Yeah, and it's like it's always I don't, again, like I don't blame like anybody in specific because it's generational trauma. Like we I was told all of these things by like women in my family, but those women in my family were also being told by other women in their family like these things, you know? So it was generational trauma built up and dumped onto me.
Yep.
And like I was going to make a point, but like with all of that being said, like I think blaming like your family members for doing these things to you, like I think it's a tad harsh because we have to understand like that they were put under that as well, and it's like you don't ever realize that it's wrong until someone tells you it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. It's kind of weird. Like if you want to hold somebody super accountable, like it's my parents' fault or whatever, I feel like eh, show a little sympathy at least because there's a lot of generational trauma built in. Like you can see it in los abuelitos and abuelitas, especially. Like they're always like, even my abuelita, like she has the ideal of what a Latino should be. So anytime I have my hair super long, she's like, or I paint my nails, she's like, this is not how our idea of what a Latino man should be like. Or even like when it comes to like work and stuff, like there's like the Latino boy jobs, like you get your male jobs and this is what you're supposed to do. And then the woman is the clean, be the maid and stuff like that. Like you have a very, it's a weird way of looking at it, I think.
yeah, like dang, I had this thought and just, whoosh. But like, it's just very, I feel bad for like all parties involved, right? Because it's like the family is being, is housing those oppressive structures from the outside world, and
Mm-hmm.
then they're perpetuating that further onto their children and their children's children. Like, it's a vicious cycle of like telling ourselves that we're not beautiful enough to be whatever we are, and if we don't fit like that, I guess, standard or like the way of being Mexican, then you're classified as a deviant of like the culture. You're seen as like a rebel of the
Mm-hmm.
culture. And it's like, no, not necessarily. It's just we there's a different generations. Like we've just expanded differently, and we're categorizing ourselves even though we shouldn't be. We're categorizing ourselves differently now, and in a way I think it's like a better form of doing so, instead of like falling to those like deceptions of like Eurocentrism of being this type of beautiful or this type of person or whatnot. Um, and I don't know about you, like, did you ever, what was like a rude awakening for you and realizing like your place in your culture?
I think for me, it was definitely like um, when like around high school when I started like growing my hair, trying to grow it like longer and doing things that are like not traditionally masculine and not being able to like speak the language perfectly. Like I feel all those things like mixed together was like, okay, yeah, you're definitely like not fitting the cult like the idea of the man that we have for in this culture. So that was like my rude awakening was like, okay, I don't entirely like fit the mold. I think. I think did I answer the question right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you did.
Okay.
I think mine was when I actually cut my hair, so it's like the opposite. When I did that, everyone was like, "What are you doing? Like your hair's so long." And I first cut it when I was like, I want to say I was sophomore in high school. So I cut it very, very short. Like even this is like a little longer than what I had.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was like freaking out because they were like, dude, like you look like a boy. And I was like, it's
And
hair. It
yeah.
grows, like it happens. I could cut it, it could grow back. Like these things are temporary, and even dyeing your hair too. I don't know if you get told shit about that in your family, but in my family, they're like, "What are you doing? You're dyeing your hair blonde." Like it's just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like I don't like the gendered thing. Like this is what you expect. Oh, Latina, long hair. Like I don't know. That's super weird. Like like have high school Elijah, and then they tell you, oh, you look like a boy, and then point to me with my long hair. Uh,
Like make it make
yeah,
sense.
make it make sense. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it just I guess like one time I heard someone say like you guys are your generation is the deviant generation of Mexican culture.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what does that mean entirely? Does that mean it's because we're no longer like accommodating those labels that have been enforced onto us, or is it because like we're liberating ourselves from that?
Yeah.
And is that liberation deviance? Because it makes me feel pretty damn good. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I guess deviance is a good thing for me at least. It's like
Yeah.
I don't want to conform to these things that have been told to me like to be, because I mean if I were to conform to those like values or ideas, then I would not be who I am, and I think who I am is a very vital thing. Like if I didn't have me, then I wouldn't be me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Like you were saying, like it's the deviation from the like standard for so like since I keep bringing this up like talking about it from a male perspective like the machismo like breaking out of that like toxic masculinity like if that's going against the culture that you've established then I think that's a good thing. I think we should all be a little bit less machismo when it comes to boys here in the valley because you see it a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of misogynistic characteristics instilled to us by our fathers and even mothers too. It's not. It's all like you were saying that generational trauma.
Yeah. And I was gonna say that as well. It's also like the women in your family that perpetuate like those misogynistic tendencies. So it's like I always hated being told this. I hated it. Where my family were coming, like my family members were coming over to like our house,
Hmm.
and my mom or like people in the family, the women in the family especially, would tell us like, "Where don't you be wearing shorts? You go put on some pants, even though it's like 100 degrees outside." Well, I'd always think, why do I have to wear pants? Like, why can't my family members not be fucking weird and not do those things? So it's like again, further perpetuating like this generational trauma that they probably or they know somebody that experienced something like that where it's just why can't we talk about the things that are obviously detrimental to our understanding of our culture and our standards of it, you know? It's like these things are an issue and they're a prevalent issue. Why aren't you stopping like, but then again, it makes me feel bad saying that because it's like I have to understand like from their point of view, like that they're also victims in the system as well, like of perpetuation. So
Hmm.
I can't be too harsh on anyone really. It makes me sad all around.
Hmm. Yeah. Like I was gonna ask, like, did you get shit for going to college? Cause you're a like I know you're not a woman, but the the label put on you. But I feel like most Hispanic families would be Latina. You're a Latina, and if you're a Latina, you stay and you take care of the house for your husband. You clean the kitchen for your husband, and you cook for your husband.
Imagine me doing that. There's a
Yeah.
in it, but I can't cook for shit. I wouldn't be able to cook an egg. Like, well,
Yeah.
I can cook an egg, but I don't know if it's a good egg. But I didn't get told shit. I did get told shit for majoring in philosophy, not by like my immediate family, but like my outside family.
Hmm.
Like they actually told me that like by doing that, by choosing like an academic life, because after my BA, like I'm gonna go get my doctorates.
Hmm.
So that I guess 10 years of my life, they were saying like those 10 years of your life could be spent on having a family,
Yeah,
you know,
where's the
like,
baby, dude? You gotta
yeah.
give me grandkids, dude.
And I'm just like, whoa. Like I'm 23 years old. I'm not nowhere near that. Like I don't even know what I'm gonna eat in the morning sometimes. I'm like, you know, so when people would tell me like, oh, you need to have family at that time, and it's like, so again, it goes back to me being a deviant. Like I'm seen as like somebody in the culture that's a rebel and it's not following the rules that are, have been placed for me. But what would I be doing like other than philosophy? Like nothing.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, no, because I know a lot of Latinas get shit for going to school, especially if you're trying to be like an academic or a professional. Like, oh no, I choose not to have kids or something. That's like a big like my grandkids. You're not gonna give me grandkids? What the heck? That's so weird. And I wanted to bring this up. The tattoos, like how
Mm.
it's kind of um, like men. I this is my personal experience, but like men, the Latinos don't seem to get too much shit for getting a tattoo, especially if it's like a cross or something. Like not too much shit for that, but if a Latina tries to get a tattoo, it's like,
It's like, what are you
yeah,
doing?
what are you doing, dude? Yeah, they give you that look like, what do you mean you want a tattoo?
I got told shit for that. It's so funny. And my tattoos aren't even big. They're like very, this is like one of them. Another one's like, these are only two I have. But you want to know how much shit I got for that? For two little small tattoos, I got burned because they just did not, like, they couldn't understand. Even though my brothers had big tattoos, like, you know, sleeve tattoos, they couldn't understand why I, as a woman, like would want to do that to my body.
Hmm.
I was like, you would like they were telling me like it would be better if you just had kids instead of like doing like if you're gonna ruin your body, like ruin your body like that, where it's
Yeah,
something that it gives like an actual result, I guess. And I'm like,
you fulfilled your role. You
yeah, you fulfilled
fulfilled
your
your
role
yeah.
in the
Once you fulfill
future.
your role, you can you can let yourself go, but give me grandkids first.
Seriously, and it's weird. It's like these two little tattoos caused a whole commotion. It was, imagine if I got like a sleeve or if I got anything bigger, it would have, like, they would have lost their shit. They would have not been able to conceptualize that at all, that a woman would want to get tattoos. But I don't know.
What do you think is the solution? We're gonna wrap it up here soon, but what's the solution to feeling alienated? How do you think we get around that? So, let's say you're talking to somebody and they tell you, you know, I I consider myself a Latina, a woman, but I don't want to have children. I want to go to school and be an engineer or something that is traditionally like male dominated. I want to be a scientist and I don't want to have any kids. What do you think is the but I want to feel included in the culture. I want to feel like a Latina, like I'm filling my role or I'm part of the culture. What do you think is the answer to this weird existential personal identity crisis where I feel like I am going against the culture, but I feel like the culture maybe is going against me, you know?
I would say dialogue. I would think dialogue would be the best amongst like people of the same shape, same lived experience, but also like individual like reflection. I think that that's very important, and realizing like your place in the world is your place. So no matter like what is being told to you, you remember that that's your place, and you
Mm-hmm.
remember that your place is significant in whatever stance you take. So I guess acceptance and that collision of feeling like you're never gonna be good enough, like just accept feeling like you're never gonna be good enough, and then you will be good enough. It's kind of like fake it till you make it almost, but I don't like saying that. It's like just yeah, just
Accept the
realize,
choca?
yeah, just accept the collision, man.
Mm-hmm.
Just accept that it's there, but it doesn't control you. And when you realize that it's there and it doesn't control you, then you are a powerful human being. And it's not to say that you're not right now. It's like your potential hasn't been activated yet. Like it needs to be actualized for it to be a thing. But once it is, like you're unstoppable, dude. So I think that's the best way to really like accommodate like everything, and also just to like realize that I don't know, man. Like things change. Okay, so in 10 years, 20 years, like the social deviants of like our culture are going to look completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be a part of that process. And that's a beautiful thing, seeing like your people emerge into something different. And it's just nice to see that. It's like, wow, okay, we're liberating ourselves from these oppressive structures we have housed in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm gonna agree with you here. I think that's kind of the beauty about reading Ansandua because I think she hits the nail on the head with El Choca. I think she does a really good job, and like you were saying, when you realize that that's what's been happening, oh, that's why I feel this way. You can accept it easier and then empower yourself. It is. I agree with you. It's very empowering. So I think that is like the big like mwah about
Yes.
Alessandua because she does a really good job hitting the nail on the head. I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So, any closing statements before we head out?
I just had to say thank you for inviting me and having like a good hour or so about philosophy, especially something I really like in philosophy. But thank you for like, listening to me ramble and just being a part of this process of dialogue.
Yeah, no problem. It's good. Like you were saying, the dialogue is important. So, talking to people who have had the same choca, it's nice. I like this. Yeah, it's good. I missed it. That's why. That's the whole reason for the podcast. Was because I
And
missed it. Yeah.
good old days.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, everybody. Hello there. I just finished editing that video you just watched. Hope you liked it. Hope you thought it was pretty poggers, as they say. Hope you liked it enough that you liked and subscribed. I think that's pretty poggers if you did. Since this is the first video I'm uploading, I feel like I should inform you guys that I don't know how often I will be uploading on this YouTube channel. I'm starting my graduate studies in the fall and will be moving over the summer, so I don't know how much free time I will be having to find guests and match schedules. So I might do some solo content, some video essays. So if that interests you, subscribe. I have a BA in philosophy. That's my field of expertise, specifically metaphysics and epistemology, philosophy of science too. So if you're interested in that, subscribe. Sorry I don't have the best production quality. Looking at my pixely face right now. Rocking that Logitech camera that everybody bought when the pandemic first started, and I have a Razer Mini standing mic so I can make fun of people when I kill them in first-person shooters, as you do. Anyways, hit that like and subscribe button, maybe even that notification bell, if you want to see more stuff like this. Thank you for listening.